Alrighty, hello everyone. Welcome back to Dishin With Democracy. This is our 10th episode, and we are going to just go ahead and introduce ourselves. My name is Maria Zunio. I'm a senior psych major, and I'm an undergraduate coordinator here at the Center for Civic Justice, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Hello, beautiful people. Very excited to see everyone here at our final episode of the semester. My pronouns are she, hers, hers, and I'm a freshman and I'm majoring in marine biology.
Hi guys, my name is Faria, and I'm a freshman majoring in political science on a pre-law track with an MBA fast track. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion today with our peers.
Hi everyone, I'm Isabella. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a junior here at Stony Brook, majoring in political science on a pre-law track. And I'm just really excited to continue this conversation today.
Hi guys, my name is Leslie and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a third year double majoring in psych and sociology, also on the pre-law track. I'm really excited to be part of this project.
Okay, now that we've gone ahead and introduced ourselves, I just want to talk a little bit about today's episode. On today's episode, we wanted to just continue what we've been talking about in the last two episodes about immigration and the different effects that it has on our students. We've talked about legislation and how that potentially affects students on our campus. We've talked about how faculty members can help us bridge that gap between students and faculty and how to navigate those kinds of conversations. And now we're going to have some special guests from our own Center for Civic Justice just to give us their personal insights on why immigration is so important and why they themselves have a personal connection to it. So I'm just going to introduce them. And you guys can go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Marlene. I'm also an undergraduate coordinator at the Center for Civic Justice, and my pronouns are she, hers, and I'm a bio and psych double major.
Hi guys, my name is Matt. I'm also an intern for the Center for Civic Justice. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a major in computer engineering.
Hi everyone, my name is Melek Maclid and I'm a first year here at double majoring in political science and psychology, and I use she, her pronouns.
Thank you guys for being here today. I'm ready to start off our conversation, so we're just going to go ahead and jump right into the discussion. So Leslie, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, so I was wondering if anyone would like to describe how they view the struggles of an immigrant and, whether that's through personal experience or observation. If anybody would like to start us off.
Okay, I can start. So
I definitely think I'll continue. So I definitely think that the experience of being an immigrant in college or just higher education in general is very different, especially if you're a first generation student and, having your parents not go to college in America is definitely a different experience because you're kind of learning everything on your own and like don't really have like advice or guidance on navigating the experience. So I definitely think it's tough for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Marlene said. Being a first generation without your parents' guidance, being like in the position that you are now, is definitely a little problem. It's a little problem because you don't really know how to deal with it, and nobody's there to guide you because nobody's been through what you're going through. So it's definitely a little challenging.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that, we look to our parents for guidance, and I'm sure with first generation, it's difficult to kind of seek that sort of advice when you're the first person to kind of go on that journey. So thank you guys for sharing.
Yeah, that's definitely a really special perspective on that aspect, especially coming through and just navigating the waters of everything that college has to offer. Doing that with that extra level of like the unknown is definitely challenging, but you guys do it with such grace and beauty that it's such an inspiration. So, does anyone have any personal experience with the immigration system? And if not, how have you like observed certain aspects of the immigrant experience affect your peers?
I'm sorry, Chloe. Can you, at least for me, can you repeat the question just because I think it kind of cut off halfway?
Oh yeah, of course. Sorry. So does anyone have any personal experience with the immigration system, and how do you find certain aspects of the immigrant experience have like affected your peers, whether it's through conversations that you've had or through observation?
Well, I think as we already kind of talked about, like the immigrant experience in general, just it affects us all that we've gone through, not just the process itself, but also navigating, like we already talked about, like navigating things by ourselves. But also the process can be a little tedious because, again, not a lot of people go through it, or there isn't a lot of experience when going through it. So it can be a little confusing for our parents or for like our grandparents, whoever went through that process at the first time.
And I can add to that too. I think that with being like first generation, it feels like you do have to do all of this self discovery, and whether it's applying to college, doing your own homework, all these like things I have to do. And now my younger brother is going into college, and I, have to help him almost like do all this process because my mom doesn't necessarily have that experience. And I think that that gives us a unique perspective in the conversation overall. And the fact that my mom is an immigrant gives me some kind of experience with the system. She applied for her papers, and it's just a really long process that people don't necessarily always hear about, but it has impacted, I guess, the way I see getting an education in a really big way, because I know that her coming here was like a really big sacrifice, and that if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be able to have an education. So while it is a struggle, I guess, to have to do this kind of on my own, um, I take it, as I can, because I wouldn't have this opportunity otherwise.
That's certainly a really unique perspective, and definitely coming to a school with over 10% of the student population being of what is it called, foreign exchange. I find that to be very special, and it just kind of brings a light to Stony Brook that certainly I hope I hope has led people to not feel so alone in that aspect, because college is so intimidating, especially coming in as a first gen in a new country in a place that is just very overwhelming. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Maria was talking about and Chloe as well. And Malik, the immigration system is pretty long and hard and it's not talked about often. I'm an immigrant, so I've come to the United States, and the process to come here for my dad especially, like, it was very complicated. Even though we were well off there, we came here for better education, so we have to restart, and it's just very difficult. And I know we've have discussed the personal experiences with immigration, but I was hoping that someone could give insight on whether immigration traces closely in your family background and whether you would be comfortable in sharing what you've heard about those experiences.
Um, so yeah, so I was the first of my family to actually be born here, and my parents, my grandparents, my cousins, they're all immigrants. And my dad was the first one to come here, and the stories he tells are truly fascinating, and it's really incredible to like understand just how he had to start from scratch and work his way up, and build a family and provide for his family in a country that he was completely brand new in. And he came to the United States when he was younger than I am now. He was 19. And he started with like minimum wage jobs, and he like worked very hard, a lot harder than a lot of people that I know, and built up his life. And because of that, there's a lot of things that I don't have to do. I don't have to worry about a lot of things, because he was able to immigrate here and build a secure home for his kids. So I'm really appreciative of that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think our parents play a really key and significant role when it comes to like providing a foundation for us where we grow up in. So I do really like that you shared your personal experience. Thank you.
Yeah, I love hearing about firsthand experiences. I think it provides incredible insight. Actually, to kind of go on with that, I would love if anybody could talk about certain misconceptions that people have about immigrants or the children of immigrants. If anybody would like to talk about that.
I feel like a big misconception about children of immigrants, it's usually directed at children of immigrants about their parents, is that their parents are uneducated or they don't really understand what's going on, which they don't, but not because they're uneducated, just because this is a whole new place for them. This is a whole new system for them. There's no way that they're just going to come in and know everything. And I remember there's like I'm just going to bring in my personal experience into this. So when I first came here, I did not know how to speak English, but my mom did. But it's usually the other way around, where the child knows how to speak English, but the parent doesn't. So whenever we would go to doctor's appointments or anything, I felt like it was super rude because the doctor would be talking to my mom. Like he's directing the conversation at me, but he's talking to my mom, which I thought was super, super rude, because it's not taking into consideration that she's right there and he could talk right to her. Even if she doesn't understand him, I still think that this whole miscommunication thing, what could have been it could have been dealt with a little bit differently, which is another which is like how I see the misconception about children of immigrants and their parents.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned, because actually for me it was the opposite. Most of the time my parents would be working multiple jobs because they did have me young, but my grandmother, who only speaks Spanish and is immigrant herself, was usually the one to take care of me most of the time. And so I would have to go with her wherever she went, and that would include doctor's appointments. And mainly because of that, I would have to translate for her. And I noticed that even though I was like 10, 11 years old, very young, the doctor would be directing the questions towards me, and I would have to translate for my grandmother. And I was very young, so obviously I couldn't translate, medical terms such as that. But I felt like, he was talking to me, and then he would look at my grandmother, and I almost felt like he assumed that my grandmother was uneducated, as you mentioned. And, that kind of, I don't say it took a toll on me, but it kind of, gave me this perspective on how, these misconceptions can come up on not just immigrants and children of immigrants, but on the level of education they believe that immigrants have. So thank you for sharing that personal experience.
Yeah, I as well have very similar experiences. My father did come here to, work and stuff, and he never had the opportunity to be in the American school system, but my mom did. She went to high school here, and she speaks English very well, but in school she was automatically handed like the Spanish form. And although I'm very grateful that, they had that for parents who didn't speak English, like I feel like it was better off to ask before just assuming and just handing it. And yeah, but I guess I wanted to continue this by kind of discussing kind of in your opinion, like what you think some of the strengths and advantages are of being an immigrant or a child of immigrant, and how you feel that this gives you like a unique experience in certain aspects.
I think being a child of immigrants or being an immigrant myself, it
So
definitely sets you up for like it's definitely an advantage because once you're put into any new setting or a new place or anything, you can easily manage. And because we already talked about this, like in college, for example, if you're first generation, you don't have any guidance to look like you don't your parents didn't go here for school or anything, so you can't look up to them for guidance. So whenever you're put within any other situation, even if they can give you guidance, you're kind of independent in that sense that you can come up with your own. You kind of work with your own resources, and I think that's an advantage of being an immigrant or a child of immigrants.
Yeah, I agree. I love to say that we kind of get like the best of both worlds just because we get to see like a lot more than maybe like the average, or I couldn't say that, but we get to see a lot more of like things that go out in the world and like insight on like your culture, but also what you're kind of going through now, like in American culture. So I think it's really cool that we kind of get to, get to see both sides of it.
And I'm just gonna agree with what Isabella said. I think, and as I mentioned before, I think that as much as we have to recognize that it is like a struggle sometimes. It feels really lonely to feel like you have to do all these things on your own. It really does give you, I guess, a newfound appreciation for the things that we do. Just getting an education and just being able to have a job, being able to speak the language, like seeing how my parents struggled, learning English and getting jobs and having me help them translate, as some of you guys have shared, gives you a new appreciation for, like the fact that we are bilingual or that we understand two languages, the fact that we um, now have now have resources on how to apply for college, how to write an essay, how to do a simple math problem, and that we can share that with our younger siblings or any younger family members that may need it now. So I think that it gives us a different type of appreciation and makes at least me just hold on to what I've done for much closer to my heart. I mean, I think that everyone should be proud of all the accomplishments that they make, but at least for me, like I hold it very close to my heart, and it is really a really big part of my identity, the fact that my parents are immigrants, and that I just I love that I have that, I can say that, it makes me feel really happy. And we have talked a lot about what it's like to be an immigrant, be the child of immigrant, have experiences with immigrants, but I wanted to see if anyone wanted to share experiences for those who may not be immigrants. Like, this is the whole point of us doing this episode, is to be able to showcase what we want to share with other students who don't necessarily come from that kind of background. And I was just hoping that someone wanted to, if anybody wanted to share, like, what do you think? Like, do you, at least on Stony Brook, like, let's relate it back to Stony Brook. Like, do you think Stony Brook does a good job of sharing like immigration information? Like, do you guys feel like you talk about it enough on campus? Like, what kind of resources have you seen on campus to be able to navigate those conversations, whether you are of an immigrant background or not?
I'm obviously not of an immigrant background. It's my ancestors immigrated here like 150 years ago or whatever. But I think obviously Stony Brook having such a high international student population, and even just obviously conversations like this taking place, I find a lot of these stories to be very inspiring. Obviously, like if I go to the doctor's office, I never have to deal with any of what you guys said, but having to translate or whatever. So I think like having conversations like these through like the Center for Civic Justice or whatever does do a lot for the people like me who, even like in high school, it was pretty much an all white school. Everyone was from Long Island. Everything was whatever. So I just think conversations like these are really beneficial to people like me who really haven't had much education in this aspect.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that, because I think that like that was our whole our whole goal. Like it's easy for, I would assume it's easy for people of a similar background to who share same ideas to be able to have a conversation. But we appreciate having that perspective of not necessarily having that background, but still an interest in being able to share our stories and feel like we are being heard, because as powerful as it is to get together with a bunch of people who share very similar beliefs, it's also, there's power in like having our voices heard by students who don't understand that perspective but are open to understanding that perspective. So thanks for sharing that, Matt. And then does anybody want to add any final notes, any final experiences? Matt, do you want to add anything to your answer, anything like that?
I think it's really cool that we're having this conversation and we're talking about these things because, like we've said, like it can be very lonely being an immigrant in college or being a child of immigrant in college, because you think that these experiences are so, you just feel so different from most of your classmates. But talking to people who have similar experiences to you can be really helpful in, some sort of, sense of solidarity and comfort and encouragement. And it's really motivating to see so many people who are so motivated, and future lawyers and doctors and teachers and everything in between, be children of immigrants or immigrants themselves, because we have this unique perspective of our own experiences, and we can use our personal stories to lend a hand to future immigrants and other people who are in the same shoes as we once were. So I think that's really cool.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing what they've shared so far. I think I just want to throw one more question out there to everyone and see what everyone thinks. This is obviously just like an initiative that we did here at the Center for Civic Justice, just to try to make it more of a personal thing. We can post a bunch of Canva posts or hand out a bunch of paper resources that you can read, but we wanted to put, a face to the case. We wanted to, show that there are actual voices behind these kinds of stories. But besides initiatives like this, like, what do you guys think are ways that our own community at Stony Brook or our campus can do to just either give out more information on the topic or just to help bridge the gap between students of like different backgrounds?
I would say, obviously, like, aside from something like this, which I think is really good because it does provide like all of your perspectives, which are very much like important. I think obviously there are like a lot of clubs on campus that like are for like a specific culture or group of people or whatever. And I think those are really obviously great to be able to have people like them to talk to each other or whatever, like who are from that specific culture. I almost feel like it would be almost better to have like them combine almost, or have like large scale events so people could talk to each other and gain the different perspective of being from a different culture, and like obviously allowing people like me who can't really relate to something like this to still go and be able to learn about the perspectives. Obviously in college you're going to meet a lot of different people anyway, but I think if it's more like organized or something like that, it would be a lot easier and more accessible to everyone.
Does anyone else in the group want to add anything before I transition to our second part of the episode? No? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you guys for coming and representing the center, and for sharing your personal anecdotes and for giving us your perspective on the conversation. We are now going to be entering our second part of our episode, so you guys are welcome to go ahead. Thank you so much for joining us. It was really nice talking to you guys. Yeah. Thank you guys. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Okay, so with that being said, it was really great to hear some of our voices here at Stony Brook and some of our voices from our own center. I know that I had a really great time hearing from my fellow peers, but we wanted to make this episode be a little bit different and just be a little bit more special. We wanted to try a new initiative where we also take questions from our audience members. So I see that there are a couple of people who have joined us. For anyone interested, you are more than welcome to submit a question to us, and myself or one of my fellow hosts will go ahead and give our personal answers to these questions, because we would love to answer more than just questions that we, have come up with or just base it on our own discussion. We would love to hear what our followers and our viewers have to say. So we have a question from Miss Wasima. Says, great discussion. I had a question I'm curious about. As students, how can we ensure immigrants and immigrant students have a voice in policy? Who would like to answer that one?
I think the first thing we need to do is kind of get all students involved in local governments, because we don't really pay attention to how important they are because they're so close to us. So that's the best way we can try to get our voice out there. And even like talking to your legislators, that's how you can get your voice to people in power, and that's how you can advocate for the policies that you want or that you feel really deeply about.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important. Oh, sorry. I think it's important to kind of get your voice out there, and there definitely needs to be more participation. I think a lot of the time we're kind of afraid that, we put ourselves out there and then our voices aren't heard. So, that kind of discouragement can greatly impact, your future advances towards that. But I definitely think that there needs to be more voices put out there to even be heard. The more voices there are, the likelier chance that we will be heard.
I definitely think from that same perspective, not being of a super close immigrant background myself, I feel like my position in this is to make sure that I'm paying attention and that I'm listening, and that we can use you guys' experiences and sit with them and discuss them and see how you carry them with you, and then use that in a sense to then create change and action. And I find that to be very important. We definitely need more of a balance, more voices, and we need more people listening, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest thing would just be getting involved, staying updated with any policies that are currently in effect, but also ones that could be in effect that could either negatively hurt you or positively, affect your life. So, yeah.
Well, all really great points. I think I can agree with my whole team that getting involved is probably one of the most important things. Whether it's talking to someone local, like a legislator, talking to someone at your school, talking to someone in Senate, anyone that represents you higher up, and just being involved is a really, really important thing to do, because that is how change comes about. It's really just either you yourself are getting a group of people with the same idea, to share that perspective with someone who can make change. But with that, we have another question. So I'm going to put that one up as well. Miss Aria says, really great conversation, guys. My question is, how do you see the interaction between immigration and social justice issues? So I'm going to go ahead and start this one off. I think that a lot of, at least for me personally, a lot of social justice issues concern a lot of different groups and a lot of different minority groups. And most immigrants, form part of that minority group. And I think that immigrant issues become social issues. I think that there's a lot of interconnection between things happening around the world that can tie all together. I think that it is important to focus on a singular issue that you have your heart set on or that you're very passionate about, but there's also value into being able to stand up for different issues altogether and have that support with you. So I think that there is, for me at least, a big intertwine between immigrant issues and other social issues.
I feel like immigrant issues and social issues are kind of the same thing. Like a lot of the things that we talk about, the social justice issues that are going around, they are people who are trying to voice their opinions because they don't feel like they're being heard in our country. So most of those people are usually children of immigrants, or immigrants themselves that feel like they need their voice out there. They need to stand up for what they want. So there's a direct correlation between people who are immigrants or children of immigrants and all the issues that are surrounding our country today.
Yeah, just as like what Maria said, like many of the immigrants do make up the minority groups, and again, those minority groups are faced with many social injustice issues. So I think it definitely just starts with like educating and making sure that they're involved so that they can, get up there and like discuss those issues, combat them, whatever they may be.
I definitely agree with Faria in the sense that it's a justice issue and we need to pay more attention to the issues that are at hand because this country was built on the backs of a lot of minority groups but not for them. And so it doesn't work in their favor whatsoever. And so they're really left in the dust while a certain group of people profit off of that in every way, shape, and form. And so I think definitely the intersections are just they're so intertwined that it just needs to be seen as a whole issue, and you can take it apart piece by piece to then make it more more digestible. Sorry.
I love what you said about, that a lot of the things that are undertaken are by immigrants. I think that's something that's not recognized as enough. But I loved how you said that, they built this thing up, but then, they kind of don't see the reward in that. And I think a lot of people kind of don't realize that. So that in itself, Chloe, thank you for even mentioning.
And we thank you, Aria, for that question. I think you brought a really important perspective to this conversation. And we have another viewer who has a question, Emiliana. She says, hello, can you share a personal story on why immigration is important to you? So anybody in specific want to go ahead, Leslie?
For me, I think it's just because my own personal connection to immigration. My family, if not every person in my family, is an immigrant, and growing up in that sort of environment was amazing. Being exposed to culture and just so much like traditions. But I think why just speaking on immigration became important to me was because I have experienced that sort of I have received, I have experienced racism, and I have experienced, people kind of misconstruing what an immigrant is and kind of speaking ill on immigrants. And I think that in itself kind of sparked this thing in me where I felt this need to kind of defend immigrants and kind of speak more on immigration and advocate and kind of spread the information there that, without immigrants, there would not even be, this nation, what we have built in this nation is on the backs of immigrants. And I think just the US itself is derived of so many cultures and so many traditions. And I think that needs to be spoken on more and just on the struggles of immigrants themselves.
So I
Yeah,
kind of wanted to, oh, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I'm not an immigrant myself, so I can't necessarily say that I know what it's like to kind of go through the process of kind of gaining citizenship, but I'm proudly a child of immigrants. My dad came here at a very young age during the civil wars that was kind of going on in Central America, and my mom came here at like 16. She, as I said before, she did go through like the American school system, so I do have like a few advantages with like my parents being able to speak English and stuff like that, but I do very much see like the problems that kind of go on with immigrants, and kind of have seen all around me my entire life how it kind of goes. So I would really just love to be a resource to them in the future. Like I said, I want to study law, so definitely being an immigration lawyer is something I'm really interested just so I can, help them kind of navigate through that process, help them cope, however, whether it's just relating to them or giving them support. So I think it's definitely something that this is like a passion for me, and I definitely wanted to be part of this to kind of just start the conversation here at Stony Brook. And I really hope to see it kind of keep going.
So immigration for me, I feel like when I heard that Maria was doing this project, I was like, oh my God, let me hop on this train. I'm an immigrant. I can talk about it. Like I have so much experience. I came to the United States in 2011, so I was around 7, 8 years old. And I know how, like, even before I was born, like, my dad had applied for citizenship to get his green card. I mean, not citizen, yeah, to come to the United States as an immigrant. He was sponsored by my aunt, and that took around 13 years. So when he got married, we all like went there. So we were already grown up. And considering how long 13 years is, like we spent a decent portion of our life back in Pakistan, where I'm from. And coming here was a culture shock, let's say. It was hard to kind of adjust to everything because we were perfectly fine back there. It's just my dad wanted us to have access to like an even better education, better opportunities. And he thought that the United States would do that for us. So I think coming here and having that experience back in Pakistan, I brought a lot of personal perspective and unique perspectives, especially like currently I'm taking a writing class. Every time my professor likes to talk on something, she'll be like, "Oh my God, Faria, can you share a personal perspective since you are an immigrant?" And I feel like it's so interesting to hear different perspectives on how things were in different countries. And I really like to advocate for people who are immigrants because I'm also doing a research paper on it. And it's basically about how immigrants are the backbone of this country. Like we built this country, not me specifically, but we're all immigrants, right? We all came here. So we have to kind of give respect back. We have to do things for them. We have to advocate for them because they made us who we are. Like our innovations, our technologies, biggest businesses. Elon Musk, for example, like he's an immigrant from South Africa. We kind of have to appreciate everything that they bring to us and how much they've improved our country. So we really have to advocate for them, whether it's through policies, talking about it, having a conversation in our community, and really respecting them as people.
I think that I can appreciate everyone and the reason why they wanted to join this project. So this was actually a project that I had started. Well, not the podcast itself, but the discussion that I wanted to carry out on the podcast was about immigration, and that to me obviously was very personal. As I've probably mentioned, like in every episode, my parents are immigrants, so to me that's something it's a really big part of my identity. And I feel like it was always hard for me to, I guess, navigate those conversations at first, before coming to college, because it's a hard conversation. Growing up, you hear a lot of things, see a lot of things on the news, so it makes you confused on what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to act. And I wanted to, at least for my time here at the center, wanted to showcase a more personal aspect on our stories and on the voices that this community holds. And that's why we tried to do as much outreach and, reach people that are outside of our, little center. And it's just something that I wanted to do to just showcase like the importance of it to me. Obviously, for people who don't come from an immigrant background, it may not necessarily be on the same priority list as it is for myself. Like, talking about this is something that I really wanted to focus my attention on. And being able to explain that to other people as to why it's important to me, I think is something that's really powerful. I think that it gives them a different perspective as to who I am as a person. It gives them a different perspective as to why the topic is important and why including people from different backgrounds, from different cultures, from different countries is important, because we try to be as inclusive as we can, and that was just my big aim with this project. I think we have one more audience question that I'm going to go ahead and put in. LP2406 says, "Hello, amazing discussion. I was wondering if you find it difficult to embrace your culture at school." And I'm going to start it off if you guys don't mind again. So going back with what I said, I think that growing up, it was a little bit hard for my culture specifically. My parents are Ecuadorian, so I didn't necessarily have a lot of Ecuadorian friends growing up. I did have a lot of Hispanic friends, so being Hispanic was never like an issue. It was more so tuning into my Ecuadorian culture specifically. And even in college, I don't necessarily know a lot of Ecuadorian people, but I do know that there are a lot of us around this campus, which is really fun to see and really nice to feel. Being able to do this kind of project has helped me embrace where I come from in a much bigger way than I feel like I could say in previous years I was able to do. Just being part of a place that lets me express my ideas makes me feel like I can tune into my culture in more ways than I felt like I could in the past. And I will proudly say like where I'm from, and that's never been an issue for me, but I would love to see I guess the integration of different cultures overall. I think that in itself makes me feel comfortable, hearing where all the interns are from and hearing where all the other students are from makes me feel like, wow, we really are a really diverse group, and like no one should be ashamed of where they're from. We should all be celebrating all these amazing countries that we come from. So that's my perspective on that.
So I don't really think it was difficult for me. I'm pretty proud of being a Pakistani. Like I'll bring it up in any discussion. I'm like, I'm from Pakistan. I wasn't born here. A lot of my friends at school, they're all very like similar to me, right? They're coming from the same places. Like it's easy for me to accept who I am without feeling like being judged. And I think that it's a big issue because when I see there's people I've seen from Pakistan who are scared to embrace who they really are. So they try to like fit in to school and whatever the standards are for being, westernized or American, like you try to like kind of erase your identity and where you're from when really you should be proud of it because I'm proud of where I'm from. I'll talk about anyone, anything they have to say. Like I'm just grateful that I have that experience and that my family had brought me here and I was able to like share with other people.
I kind of have a bit of a different perspective on this aspect. My grandfather immigrated from Hungary when he was 5, escaping World War II, and he had tuberculosis at the time, so he had to quarantine. And so while the rest of his family that came with him was looking for a place to live, a place to stay, he was left behind at the government like station on Ellis Island. And so hearing those stories is just very jarring in a sense because like escaping war is very, very common in an immigrant experience. But growing up, I was very disconnected from Hungarian culture. He very much embraced acculturation, assimilation in the sense that he was now American and that was a big deal for him. And so growing up, we didn't have much culture at all. And the overarching idea with both sides of my family is we don't really know where like the rest of our roots lay. And so just kind of, and that's probably why I joined this podcast, because I think getting to witness people indulge in their culture in a safe space where they can be heard and they can share their experiences and their stories and be proud of themselves and where they're from, I think it's just something that is so beyond magical. And so just being able to be a part of that and be able to listen to you guys' great ideas. I couldn't have asked for a better team for this project. Like you guys are just wonderful people and I'm very grateful that we were able to do this.
For me personally, I first I would like to agree with Chloe saying like I love this project. I love working with you guys. But in terms of the culture discussion. For me, actually, it was interesting to hear Maria's take on how, for her, she had Hispanic friends, but she didn't necessarily have that kind of exposure to other Ecuadorians. Because for me personally, I felt like I've always been around other Mexicans. And especially in high school, I was fortunate enough to kind of have more friends from that background around me. But I think, coming to Stony Brook, I think that kind of exposure dwindled. The first 2 years, I found it difficult to actually even embrace my culture because I didn't know much information at all. But thankfully, as of late, I have been able to embrace my culture in the terms of, being exposed to more information and events here at school. So I also would like to thank everyone for creating this discussion. I think this was actually definitely productive in terms of embracing my culture, because I think this discussion in itself of speaking on immigration was amazing, that it created this dialogue that I felt like has never been used or done before. Because before this, I had never heard of Stony Brook taking this initiative on speaking more on immigration, especially with these amazing dialogues that have happened in the past.
Yeah, also for me, I have grown up on Long Island my entire life. So growing up, it was like a yes or no. Most of the time in high school specifically, I was like the only Hispanic girl in my honors or AP classes. But then when it came to lunchtime, that's when I saw all my friends who were Hispanic or Salvadorian, just like I am. And then same thing with being at Stony Brook. Like as Leslie said, the first 2 years were a little hard. That could be very much because it was during the pandemic. But then once I started kind of again getting myself involved, making sure I was being aware of all the activities and events happening that I would like to be a part of and related to, that's when I kind of started finding fellow Hispanic students and just from other minority groups as well. And although I haven't seen many Salvadorians, I really do like that we have such a broad array of culture groups that I can also learn from. And then again, once I found that Maria was kind of hosting this podcast and talking about the topic of immigration, that's when I also found these lovely ladies here. And like we all share a really great passion or interest on immigration, which relates back to my identity as a Hispanic woman, as a Salvadorian um, child of immigrants. It all relates. And I'm just really grateful that I was able to be part of this.
Well, thank you to my team, honestly, for helping me make this podcast, these episodes become a reality. Like I said, this was just an idea that I had. I knew that I wanted to come back to this podcast that we have at the center and be able to share information and perspectives. And I really couldn't have done this without all of your support and all of your help. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who supported us by watching us, by clicking on that link, clicking the like button, by telling their friends about it, by people joining. We've had a bunch of special speakers, from students to faculty members to student staff to more student representatives. So thank you to everyone. I hope that this episode brings more insight to your life about what it's like to be one of us, and that we can continue the podcast, and we would love to dive into more topics of interest that the students at Stony Brook or our viewers would like us to touch on. We this is our last episode for the semester, but we will continue this podcast series in the next fall semester, and it will be headed by a brand new team of students, and they will bring their own insight on a bunch of different things. I again just want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed these last 3 episode series. If you have any suggestions on any kinds of topics that you would like us at the center to cover, feel free to comment them. Feel free to reach us out on Instagram or via email. And we love integrating what everybody has to say. And what else was I going to say? For any information on anything that we've covered in our previous episodes, or in this episode itself, you can find the information on our Instagram at Civic Justice SBU, or you can go ahead and shoot us an email at civicjustice@stonybrook.edu. Those two will be linked in the description, so please feel free to reach out to us. And yeah, thank you so much for everyone. We hope you enjoyed this, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.